On the 11th of December 2012, the Centre for Poverty Analysis hosted its annual symposium in Colombo for the 11th consecutive year. At the end of the two-day symposium, a dialogue with policymakers was conducted to share the outcomes and key questions that were discussed during the 7 previous sessions. This stock-taking exercise of reimagining development was open to the public, as the aim was to identify possible points of entry for both policymakers and non-policymakers in shaping the development discourse while creating space for valid dialogue on alternative thought.
අපි වගේ ආර්ථිකමය තාමත් අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් පහළ ආදායම් මට්ටම් වල සිටින රටවල් වල ජනගහනයෙන් සෑහෙන ප්‍රතිශතයකට තාමත් අවශ්‍යම ආර්ථික ප්‍රතිලාභ නොලැබෙන අතරේදී මේ වගේ සංවාදයක යෙදෙනකොට මට මම තරහවක් කියලා කියන්නේ නැහැ. නමුත් මට නිකන් ඒ වගේ හැඟීමක් ඇති වුණා මේක මේ න්‍යාය පත්‍රය එහෙම කිව්වොත් මම පිළිගන්නවා මම කිව්වා අර මගේ අර මානසික මට්ටමින් මම පිළිගන්නවා සංවර්ධනය කියන එක ආර්ථිකයට වැඩිය බොහොම පුළුල් අදහසක් කියලා. නමුත් මේ න්‍යාය පත්‍රය මොකද අපිට අනික් හුඟක් දේවල් ගැන කතා කරන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් මේක කතා කරන්නේ කවුද? කාගේ හැඳින්වීමද? whose definition? තේරුණා නේද? මේක කාගේ හැඟීමද?
ඉරාන් මන්ත්‍රීතුමාගේ ඒ අදහසත් සමග සමපාත වෙන අදහසක් තියෙනවද? මෙතන මේ ඒ පැත්තට බර අදහස් තියෙනවද? එහෙම නැත්නම් ඊට ප්‍රතිවිරුද්ධ හැඟීමක් අදහසක් මතු කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? අපි අනුර දිසානායක මන්ත්‍රීතුමාට අපි ආරාධනා කරමු.
ආර්ථික වර්ධනය වේවා, ඒක පුද්ගල ආදායම වේවා. ඒ අප මත එක දෘෂ්ටි කෝණයකින් පටවන ලද නිර්ණායකයන්. ඒ නිසා සැබවින්ම දශක ගණනාවක් තිස්සේ අපිට අවශ්‍ය වී තිබුණා සංවර්ධනය පිළිබඳව නව මානයන්, නව දිශාවන් සොයාගෙන යෑමේ පිපාසයක් මම හිතන්නේ ලෝකේ පුරා විකල්ප මතධාරීන් විසින් ඉදිරිපත් කරමින් තිබුණා. ඉතින් අපි මට මේ සාකච්ඡාව ප්‍රවිෂ්ඨ වෙනකොට දැනුනේ එක් යුගයකදී සංවර්ධනය පිළිබඳව පසුගිය නිර්ණායකයන්ම හඳුන්වා දීමට දායක වූ ඒ වෙනුවෙන්ම විශාල කාර්යභාරයක් කරන ලද ආයතන ඒ ආයතන වලටම සිදු වී තිබෙනකොට තමන් එතෙක් හඳුන්වා දෙන ලද සංවර්ධන නිර්ණායකයන් නොවේ සැබවින්ම සංවර්ධනීය මානයන් තිබෙන්නේ වෙනත් දිශාවක කියලා. ඉතින් ඒක ඉතා හොඳ ප්‍රවණතාවයක් කියන දිශාවෙන් තමයි මම මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ දැක්කේ.
Thank you, Dilakshi.
I think I want to both agree and disagree in some ways. I think one is I am also somewhat torn about the question of when on the conference title of Reimagine Development, it almost puts you on the front foot to say it needs to be reimagined. And then the question of does it need to be reimagined, or is the reimagining happen and we've just not come to the same page about what we need to talk about. I think the reimagining needs to happen because as the synthesis presentation stated, the context is changing. And so I think even if you look in the Sri Lankan context, with the post-war reaching middle income status, impressive results on the MDGs, but there are significant disparities. There are significant disparities regionally, significant gender disparities, violence against women is on the rise. And so in some ways, while we may tick the boxes in terms of some of the measurements, some of the indicators that are being used, maybe it is also time for us to rethink the boxes. And I think that is possibly why the whole question of reimagining development comes. So, if economic growth has been on the front foot and there are still all these challenges and disparities, is it also that we need to be rethinking the boxes that we are checking that make Sri Lanka or any other country a model for development? If I can just take one example of women in development, because also that was the session that I was in. In many ways, Sri Lanka is held up as having a very impressive record of development gains vis-a-vis women in the country, and even on some of the universally accepted development indicators, whether women in health, women in education, women in employment. But one thing that we are not all aware of is that there has been some regress even in the gains that we've made. But I don't think there is sometimes a critical questioning. For example, the quality of education, or what kind of education, for example. So that would be just one example that I would take to think that we really need to push the envelope harder of what we consider also the measurements of, we need to reimagine the measurements of development.
Now, there was a lot of debate about it during the last 2 days, and we felt that development should go beyond economic development. And I would like Honorable Harsha De Silva, who is an economist himself, to reflect on this.
Growth is fundamental in development. You can't talk about development without talking about growth. So I think there is no way in which you can dichotomize these two. And so therefore, I disagree if people say, look, it is time for us to sayang ulanna now, because we still have to close most of the hill, You close 10% of the hill and start ulanna sayang, won't work. Because I also saw this word steady state here. I don't know what was meant by that, because we are beyond that kind of growth theories. Here we are talking of human resource development, endogenous growth models, where we need to actually invest in education and innovation. I didn't see the word innovation much. I didn't see the word technology. And if without innovation and technology, of course you're going to have a steady state. And that steady state is not going to be beneficial for a country like ours, like Iran said, still at $2,000-3,000 per capita income. We can think about it down the road. I'm not for a moment saying, look, there shouldn't be equitable distribution of wealth. I hold a balanced view, and I think we are still long before the point that we can talk about, we got to move beyond growth, because there's a lot more growth that needs to happen before we say, that's a different discussion. These two discussions must go in parallel. That's my view.
මම හිතන්නේ සංවර්ධනයේදී තියෙන මූලිකම ප්‍රශ්නය ඕකයි බේරගත යුතු. එතන වර්ධනයක් සිදුවිය යුතුයි. නමුත් කොහොමද මේ වර්ධනය සාධාරණ ලෙස බෙදාගන්නේ කියන එක. එතනදී මම කැමති අපේ ආරාධනා කරන්න මේ වෛද්‍ය විඤ්ඤාරි රත්න මහත්මයාට විශේෂයෙන් ඔබතුමන්ගේ ඒ සර්වෝදය ව්‍යාපාරයේ බෞද්ධ ආර්ථික විද්‍යාව, බුද්දිස්ට් ඉකොනොමික්ස් වගේ දේවල් වලින් ගොඩාක් ආభాෂයක් ලැබිලා තියෙනවා. එතනදී කොහොමද ඔබ තේරුම් ගන්නේ මේ සංවර්ධනය සහ සාධාරණත්වය කියන එක, මේ කාරණා දෙක කොහොමද මේ එක්තරා විදියකට සමපාත කරගන්නේ?
මේ සංවර්ධනය කියන එක නැවත වරක් අර වටිනාකම් මත පදනම් වූ වැලියු බේස්ඩ් මේකට අපි අවතීර්ණ වෙන එක. මේක මේ ආර්ථික ලෝකාර්ථික ව්‍යුහයේ කඩාවැටීම නිසා හෝ මේ කාලගුණික විපර්යාස නිසා හෝ පරිසර මේ තියෙන සීමාවන් නිසා හෝ ඇතිවෙච්ච දෙයක් නෙවෙයි. ඇත්තටම අපි අපේ වටිනාකම් අමතක කරලා තියෙනවා. ආධ්‍යාත්මික පසුබිම දැන් අපි වගේ ව්‍යාපාරයක් කරන්න හැදුවේ ඒ අපේ මේ සංස්කෘතිය තුල තිබුණු මේ වටිනාකම්, මේ සමබර සංවර්ධනය පිළිබඳ තිබුණු යථාර්ථය ඒ විදිහටම එළියට ගැනීම. එතකොට මිනිස්සුන්ට තිබුණේ ඇත්තටම පිටින් ගිහිල්ලා කවුරු හරි සංවර්ධනය පටවන්න නෙවෙයි ඔවුන්ට ඔවුන්ගේ යහපැවැත්ම සඳහා ඔවුන්ගේ මූලික අවශ්‍යතා සම්පූර්ණ කිරීම සඳහා තිබුණු බාධක ඉවත් කිරීම තමයි සර්වෝදය වගේ ව්‍යාපාර වලින් කරේ. එතනදී holistic approach එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි ඒකාබද්ධ ප්‍රවේශයක් ඒ විදිහේ පූර්ණ ප්‍රවේශයක් ගැන හිතන්න නැවතත් අවස්ථාව ලැබිලා තිනවා. ඒ නිසා අර අපි සංවර්ධනයේ නවමානයන් කියලා හඳුන්වන්නේ එකාතකට බැලුවාම අපේ බොහෝ සංස්කෘතීන් වල ප්‍රජාවන්හි තිබුණු ඒ වටිනාකම් නැවත මතු කර ගැනීමක්. නමුත් මේකේ සමහර දේවල් වල මා හිතන්නේ අපි අලුතෙන් හිතන්න වෙනවා. ඒ මොකද අපේ සමාජ ආර්ථික රටාවම වෙනස් වෙලා වගේම ජනගහනය වර්ධනය වෙලා අපේ මේ තියෙන තත්ත්වය ගොඩක් වෙනස්. ඒ නිසා අපි ආපහු ඒ මූලික වටිනාකම් හඳුනා ගන්නවා කියන්නේ පස්සට යෑමක් නෙවෙයි. නමුත් නව තාක්ෂණය, ඒ වගේම මේ ගෝලීයකරණය මේවා තුල අපිට පුළුවන් නව නිර්මාණ ඇති කරන්න, නව බලාපොරොත්තු ඇති කරගෙන නව සංකල්ප ඔස්සේ ඉදිරියට යන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් අර මූලික හරයන් මා හිතනවා සදාතනිකයි, ඒවා මුළු විශ්වයටම අදාළයි කියලා.
බොහොම ස්තුතියි. I would like to invite Honorable Vasantha Senanayake to react to that. Do you think that an indigenous, locally, or homegrown kind of development model is possible?
I see as one of the major impediments to development as the alcohol and tobacco industry. Why I categorize and specifically refer to this industry, because by the legally declared profits earned by these industries, tobacco and alcohol, and division of that annual income, as regards the Grama Niladhari divisions in this country, works out to each Grama Niladhari division spending 10 million rupees annually. 10 million rupees annually. Harsha, you and I get 5 million rupees to develop our entire constituency. 5 million to develop an entire constituency, whereas one Gram Niladhari division spends 10 million rupees on these industries. Yes. Now the NATA Act, which this government introduced in 2006, is a very good act. But it is not a government alone that can implement this. The religious teachers or the institutions in the respective localities, the teachers at grassroots level, and I think the women folk have a primary role in this. And this role has to be taken very seriously, because it is one of the biggest impediments, I think, to us moving forward as a country and as a society.
I would like to continue the discussion and would like to invite Honorable Kabir Hashim. What's the role of the state in terms of shaping this kind of value-based development policies?
If you take Sri Lanka, I would like to say how much the political leadership or the political system has played a role in development. We've been following different policies. In the 70s, we were more towards import substitution. In the 77s, after J.R. Jayawardena became the president in the United National Party, we opened up the economy. But remember one thing, after independence, what did the political leadership take upon the country? There was one important thing. We thought about development and we invested in human development. That is why we're still one of the leading countries in terms of literacy, in terms of the lowest infant mortality rate. We are still by far one of the best countries if you look at the HDIs. We are falling now. The HDI, Human Development Index, has come down between 2010 and 2012. We have come down in competitiveness. We have come down in a lot of international global rankings. But we made huge investments. Those investments were in education, in health. We did the right things. It was not purely about huge infrastructure projects. It was not getting millions of dollars and dumping it in the wrong projects. But because we did it, the number of teachers the number of students per teacher declined, the number of trained teachers increased, the number of schools increased, the number of hospitals increased. Those were the values that we had. But over time, from 70s, 80s, 90s, as we moved on, I suppose we lost track of our priorities. And in that sense, we have still today, my thinking is that we don't have a clear, coherent policy. One thing. And also, in terms of policy, because after the Washington Consensus and with neoliberalism, today the Western world is rejecting neoliberalism to an extent. They're talking about state intervention, for the state to play a role. And as I saw Nilukshi's presentation, Singapore has a huge public sector. The public sector has to play a regulatory role. There is no fixed development model, I believe. I believe models change to different countries. The applicability in each country can be different. What's right for India is not right for us because we are a smaller country. So we need to be flexible. We need to pick the right things from the global economy and take those and use those the way we want. That's where political leadership is important.
Now I would like to open the discussion to the floor. Now that we have heard the 7 views or takes from our distinguished panelists, I would like you to ask a question from them or to make a comment so that we could continue the conversation. So it's over to you.
Compared to the East Asian countries, that's where I think we failed in this respect. Because you need to have mobilize enough savings and investment if you want to grow. And when you have a huge investment in human development, your savings levels might go down. But I don't believe that. What happened was we were not using doing the right things. What Sri Lanka needs to do, one of the mistakes Sri Lanka has right now also is that we're talking about GDP, per capita income, but we have a huge income inequality. The distribution of income is very bad. And one thing, if you want to increase your level of savings and investment in the country, you need to have proper distribution of income. That sets things straight. So you need to balance this. Definitely, as much as you invest in human development, you need to have the economic growth side pushed.
Why is the state putting money in areas where the private sector can actually, do well and deliver? There are areas where the private sector may not be able to invest the kind of money the state can at the beginning. I mean, if you look at the Mahavali project, there was no private sector that could have done the Mahavali project at that time. The government needed to do that. But if you look at the Mattala Airport or something else, the Hambantota Port, there is no real need for the state to invest 100% on that project. So those can be opened up. And if you look at the main issues, which I really completely agree wholeheartedly with my senior colleague Kabir Hashim, is that, the investments that are going into education and health, woefully inadequate. So how are we going to do it? If the state is going to hold on to its monopoly in education and health, where will this investment come from? So we have to be pragmatic about this. So I think the discussion has to move from where we are to an inclusive one with all political parties as to how much should we liberalize so that we can bring in the right type of investments into this sector.
My colleague Kabir Hashim defined it in a particular way and said, regulation is a very important part of the state. Harsha defined it in a particular way and said that if others can do it well, maybe the state doesn't need to do it. And I'm not in variance with that. But what I say may sound like I'm very much at variance in it. What I'm trying to say is that in my mind, the size of the state doesn't matter. It's the functions of the state and how the state functions. And I think that we need to look at that more deeply. Now, I generally consistently argue for a smaller state in this country because we can't get lots of the functional issues together. And it's for that reason. It's not because it's an argument I push ideologically. So the size of the state, to me, is not as relevant as some of the other factors.
අපි පළමුකොටම අපේ ඓතිහාසික ගොඩනැන්වීමත් අපේ රටේ පිහිටීමත් මත අපේ ආර්ථික උපාය මාර්ග සකස් කරගත යුතුයි. එතකොට එහිදී ප්‍රධාන දේ තමයි විශේෂයෙන්ම අපේ රටේ ඓතිහාසික වශයෙන් ගත්තොත් බෞද්ධ ආගම හින්දු ආගම විසින් හික්මවන ලද ජන සමාජයක් අපට තිබෙනවා. ඒ නිසා එය සැලකිය යුතු ප්‍රමාණයකින් මා ඒ කතෝලික ආගම තෙවෙනි කොට සලකනවා නෙවෙයි. නමුත් ඓතිහාසික ගොඩනැන්වීම ඒ මත තමයි ගොඩනැගිලා තිබෙන්නේ. එතකොට ඒ මත පදනම් වෙච්ච කුසකර්මාන්තය මත පදනම් වූ ආර්ථිකයක් අපිට හිමිව තිබුණා. එහෙමනම් අපේ ආර්ථිකයේ ප්‍රධාන උපාය මාර්ග ඕනෑම රටකදී වැදගත් ජාතික නිෂ්පාදනය. එතකොට මොකද්ද රාජ්‍ය කාර්යභාරය? දැන් බොහෝ සංකල්පයක් තිබෙනවා රාජ්‍ය කාර්යභාරයේ නීති සම්පාදනය පමණයි. නීති සම්පාදනය සහ යටිතල පහසුකම්. විශේෂයෙන්ම 1978 දී ජේ.ආර්. ජයවර්ධන මැතිතුමා ඉදිරිපත් කරපු අයවැල් එකේ මූලික හරය බවට පත් වෙලා තිබුණේ රාජ්‍ය කාර්යභාරයේ යටිතල පහසුකම් සකස් කිරීම සහ නීති සම්පාදනයේ පමණක් සීමා වෙන්නේ. අපිට නේද ඒක අසාර්ථක වෙලා තියෙන ලෝකේ පුරා දැන්. ඒක උදාහරණ මෙතන කියන්න වෙලාව ප්‍රමාණවත් නැහැ කියලා. මේක අසාර්ථක වෙලා තිබෙනවා. නිසා රාජ්‍ය කාර්යභාරය තමයි ආර්ථිකය සැලසුම්ගත කිරීම. ඒක රාජ්‍ය කාර්යභාරය. දැන් කිසිදු ව්‍යාපාරික කණ්ඩායමක් ඇඳවලා අපේ රටේ මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශය මුදල් අමාත්‍යවරයා හෝ අපි අවුරුදු 10කින් රට ගෙන යන්න හිතන්නේ මෙතෙන්ට පෞද්ගලික අංශය ඔබ මෙතෙන්ට කළ යුතුයි කියලා මම හිතන්නේ කවදාවත් සාකච්ඡාවක් වෙලා තිබෙනවා කියලා. සාකච්ඡාවක් වුණා නම් සාකච්ඡාවක් වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ මැතිවරණ කාලේ සල්ලි එකතු කරා. මේක තමයි ඇත්ත.
Somehow we have created quite often artificial dichotomies in concepts in many ways. For example, the whole issue of growth, equality and justice. It's an old trodden area and we all know we try to make one as a mutually reinforcing one. Nobody wants to put one against the other. That's why the word development has now been described not just development per se, but we talk about pro-poor development, we talk about inclusive development, human development-oriented development, various kinds of things. So people are quite aware of the shortcomings of each of the problems and tries to find a synergy somehow. That is the whole approach. The other part of the discussion had been, if you allow me, which also incidentally been mentioned by one of the honorable speakers, and I mentioned that twice yesterday, is the absence of discussion on technology, innovation, social media, and other issues. I think once the challenges have been described so intensely, but the opportunities have not been described so elaborately. That's one of my complaints in that way. And that possibly doesn't allow us to fully fathom or to describe a new imagination which is there.
I've heard a lot about this. And I don't think there's anything really that I disagree with in a lot of what has been said. But I just want to talk about something I haven't heard. Yes, we need economic growth. We need to make the pie bigger, maybe, if you want to distribute it. But isn't there a limit to that? And what I haven't heard mentioned at all here is the whole physical environment, both in terms of the pollution of the physical environment and the destruction of the physical environment. And there are many examples in how development activity is taking place, whether you're selling land to dole bananas or whether you're having electricity generated by diesel or whether you are increasing the number of cars or whatever. There are a number of examples which show that we are putting our economic growth trajectory is putting a huge amount of pressure on the physical environment and what we are possibly leaving for the next generation.
The stock-taking exercise of reimagining development initiated the process of reconfiguring the concept of development by bringing together a diverse group of economists, policymakers, artists, and thinkers, and facilitating a cross-fertilization of ideas. While some of these key questions were discussed during the 7 parallel sessions, many other important ideas were not addressed due to time constraints. The symposium, which was essentially a thinking exercise, that culminated in many lingering questions about development, signified a timely and urgent need to continue this conversation.
That whole process is flawed. The electoral process
How do we carry
itself is
forward
flawed.
this
The
conversation that we kick-started with Reimagining Development? How do we create a broader space that would allow us to continue challenging both mainstream and alternative ideas about development? How do we facilitate the evolution of development?
Taken part in our symposium. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure to